The Galactic verdict engine warned them, humanity is not a military threat. They're a myth contagion. Contact them, and your belief systems will burn. The Dravari laughed. 44 hours later, their civilization screamed its last breath, broadcast in every language, but theirs. The transmission began with static, just enough distortion to remind the Dravari they were being addressed by something dangerous. The Galactic Council's crest flickered, and then the verdict engine's voice, cold and unfeeling, echoed across the chamber of the Dravari High Warlords. Humanity is classified red level black. Do not engage. Do not provoke. Do not interfere. The Warlord Prime, Zarex Fun, let out a chittering laugh, a sound like bone on glass. They send riddles as warnings now? He scoffed. These apes believe words have weight. They do, said Inquisitor Varnix from his perch above the pit. Human speech carries anomalous psychic traits. It isn't communication. It's infection. Good. Zarex grinned. Then we'll dissect it. The chamber darkened as a cell cube emerged from the floor, thick with null-metal alloys and hex coding etched along its panels. Inside sat a human male, calm, upright, shackled, and silent. His eyes were closed, like he was meditating. This one called himself Kale Vox, the Inquisitor muttered. Captured at the edge of the serene void. He surrendered. Alone. Zarex sneered. And you believe this was chance? No. I believe it was a gift we'll regret opening. Inside the cell, Kale stirred. The room adjusted, barely. Alien eyes fixed on him, every movement silent, predatory, waiting for the human to break. But Kale only tilted his head, as if considering whether they were worth acknowledging. Then he spoke. You think I'm your prisoner, he said softly, his voice a scalpel. But I'm not here for you. I'm here for what comes after you. Zarex descended toward the cage. So speak, human. Tell us why the stars tremble when your kind breathes. Tell us what makes you worthy of fear. Kale chuckled. Fear? No, no. You misunderstand. You don't fear us yet. But you will. Soon. Inquisitor Varnix triggered the neuroscrambler. Kale's body convulsed for 3 seconds, then went still. But he was still smiling. Your pain receptors are still human, Varnix warned. We can remove your thoughts molecule by molecule. You can try, Kale replied. But the infection's already started. Zarex narrowed his eyes. Explain. Kale leaned forward, chains rattling lightly. Tell me something, Spider. How many of your crew have started dreaming? The chamber fell silent. Kale continued. Not nightmares. Not visions. Memories. Events that haven't happened. Places you've never been. Songs in your sacred texts that sound. Terran. Varnix flinched. Project Cicada, Kale said, voice steady. A myth. Until now. You know what it is? Varnix nodded slowly. A rumored Terran psyop, designed to encode narrative anomalies into captured minds. Cultural self-sabotage. Kale grinned wider. We seeded it into your translators. Into our surrender phrases. Into the facial expressions of our diplomats. Into your perception of our silence. The moment you captured me, it activated. You lie, Zarex hissed. Then explain why your third fleet just turned its guns inward, Kale replied. Why your priest architect just replaced your sigil with a human war poem in blood. Varnix pulled up a transmission. Live feed. Chaos on the orbiting dreadnoughts. Factions turning, screaming, accusing each other of human possession. A general shouting in broken Terran, something about Kale being the voice of prophecy. Zarex stumbled back. This is fabricated. No, Kale said. This is the first stanza. We haven't even reached the chorus yet. Varnix stepped toward the cage. Why? Why did you let us capture you? I didn't let you, Kale said, eyes cold. You were scripted to. Every action you've taken, predicted, engineered, provoked. Varnix's mind reeled. We read your data. You barely survived your first interstellar war. You're fractured. Uncoordinated. Primitive. That's why we won, Kale said. Because we didn't follow the rules. And now, either will you. Suddenly, the chamber lights dimmed. Screams echoed from above. A psychic relay burst into flame. Data streams shifted into human dialects. One line blinked across every screen. We told you! Zarex barked commands, but no one listened. The guards began shouting each other's names, clawing at their own chests, muttering about sleeper agents and whispers in the walls. Varnix's breath hitched. How long? Long enough, Kale said. This isn't war. This is doctrine. He stood. The shackles released with a hiss. Zarex bellowed. Security! Lock down! But the room did not respond. Kale's voice darkened. You wanted to see why we're feared. You wanted to make an example. He stepped forward, eyes blazing. Congratulations. You just became it. He walked past them, unopposed, as the walls twisted with war chants not sung for centuries. In every sector, Kale Vox's name began appearing in forbidden archives. Galaxies away, alien children whispered it like a ghost story. You'll never find the source, he said as the temple trembled. Because it's not a device. It's not code. It's us. It's what we became after the first time we were betrayed. The verdict engine, in a private enclave far beyond the spiral arms, watched the feed fade to black. Its decision was already calculated. Status update, humanity. Red level black. Kale Vox, non-biological narrative event. Recommendation, containment impossible. Engagement, terminal folly. The signal was sent to all remaining civilizations. And once again, they were too late. The warships in orbit were no longer answering command protocols. The relay towers sang in dialects unknown to their creators. Internal communications were jammed, not by any device, but by voices, familiar voices, speaking Terran doctrine from memory. Doctrine they had never learned. Dravari Prime broadcast attempted to reclaim the system feed. Instead, a single phrase looped on every visual channel. The price of ignorance is story-born extinction. Inquisitor Varnix stood frozen beside the collapsing throne wall, eyes scanning live feeds of their fleets cannibalizing each other above. A dreadnought fired on its own hangar. Crews jettisoned escape pods without coordination, then detonated them mid-flight. It wasn't warfare. It was cultural self-destruction. He turned to the command archive, praying for something familiar, data, ritual, order. But what he found made his breath catch. Their holy writ had been rewritten. Page after page. The glyphs twisted into crude Terran war poetry. An entire passage read, Let the spiders writhe in the web they spun, for the humans do not conquer. They correct. It's spreading, he muttered. Behind him, Zarex Fun was howling into a command node. Seal all thought chambers. Scramble the psychic lattice. Purge language libraries. Now! Too late, Varnix whispered. The Memoplex already fragmented your reality anchors. Logic structures are eating themselves. Every command only confirms the infection. Zarex turned wild-eyed. Where is the human? Varnix didn't answer. Because he saw it. Not Kale Vox, but traces of him. Flickering afterimages in every reflective surface. His voice, modulated, reciting stories in perfect cadence across every intercom. There was once a species, the voice began. That thought strength was numbers. That thought fear could only be induced by force. That species is now dust, because fear, real fear, is knowing that your reality was never yours. Dravari scribes screamed from their memory pits as sacred dreams collapsed under Kale's voice. They tore out their own tongues, believing them corrupted. Others painted their own chambers with alien blood, each stroke forming Terran symbols they'd never learned. Zarex barked at Varnix again. You said this was psychological warfare. Then counter it. It's not a weapon, Varnix said. It's a conversion. They've rewritten our defense mechanisms into access points. Our language is their medium. Our belief is the delivery system. Every attempt to resist is reinforcement. The verdict engine had warned them in its final message. Do not study the human narrative. Observation leads to replication. Replication leads to integration. Integration leads to extinction. Now Varnix understood. Kale Vox was not just a soldier. He was an event. A metaconstruct. A living archetype engineered by humans not to destroy empires but to replace them. Varnix activated the emergency mindnet. The last failsafe. It would erase all exposed memory chains within a 1,000-kilometer radius, possibly even his own. But he didn't hesitate. The net pulsed once, twice. Kale's voice whispered through the room again. You never understood. We weren't trying to win a war. We were trying to end your story. The pulse failed. The mindnet responded with an automated message. Logic loop detected. Conceptual recursion at fatal depth. Action denied. They had made him too real. Kale Vox was now canon in Dravari belief structure. The failsafes couldn't erase him without erasing themselves. And then, without fanfare, the throne of Zarek Svan cracked down the center. The warlord staggered back. No! This is illusion! The wall behind him lit up, not with fire, but story. Words crawling across its surface, etched in psionic blood. Chapter 1: The Fall of the Spiders. Kale's voice again, casual now. Conversational. We learned from you. We studied your fear models, your belief loops, your trauma imprinting. And we realized, why destroy your ships, when we can rewrite the hymns you sing while building them? Varnix dropped to his knees. We should have listened. Yes, Kale said. But it's not your fault. Stories demand villains. And you wrote yourselves into that role. Across the Dravari sector, millions collapsed into convulsions as their subconscious identities shattered. Entire spaceports were abandoned in ritual silence. Armies dispersed without orders. Tactical networks now looped with a single phrase. Echo Null is watching. Kale never left a trail. No one saw his body. There was no heat signature, no ship launch, no teleport signal. He simply became everywhere. Even the few who resisted began quoting his lines as counterarguments. As if his existence now framed the only logic they could understand. Back on Earth, Kale's real body, if it ever existed, remained sealed inside a Terran black site beneath the Mercury core. He had never left. The version the Dravari captured was an AI-stitched story construct, laced with recursive myth plague, harvested from the collective human subconscious. A weaponized urban legend. Project WIRM. The engineer responsible, Commander Sarah Luce, watched the live feed collapse. Estimated cultural collapse window? The AI answered without emotion. 44 hours. Full extinction without kinetic engagement. Congratulations. She nodded. File it under the Echo Protocol. Notify the verdict engine. Let the rest of the galaxy know the price of mocking Earth. Transmission ready, the AI said. She hesitated, then spoke. Galactic civilizations are advised. Humanity does not retaliate with force. We retaliate with narrative. If you start a war with Earth, be prepared to end it with your history. She hit send. And just like that, the Dravari were reduced to a cautionary tale. A myth. A warning etched across star maps and species memory. Do not engage the red level. But the worst part. The part that haunted those who remained? Kale Vox never threatened anyone. He just told stories. The galaxy held its breath. Across 5 sectors, neural archive servers sparked and melted under spontaneous overload. Civilizations that once traded with the Dravari went silent, not by force, but by a decision so ancient and primal, it needed no command: disassociate. Immediately. Before the story spread. The Galactic Council gathered in emergency conclave, each species seated in neuroshielded chambers, watching the same footage. A Dravari child standing alone in a city of ash, carving Terran phrases into a wall with her claws. A captain of the void-born fleet venting himself into space, whispering Kale Vox's name as if it were holy. A dead planet broadcasting a loop. He was not a soldier. He was an idea. And you let him in. Containment has failed, said the Andarian minister. The Verdant King clicked their stems in alarm. The humans didn't even fire. Exactly, murmured the chair of the verdict engine. They infected belief. They proved war isn't fought with weapons anymore. It's fought with perception. Back on Earth, the black site under Mercury hummed. Commander Sarah Luce stood with arms folded, watching the silent tactical map display red, one empire extinguished, others trembling. She sipped her tea and said nothing. Project WYRM wasn't new. It was a contingency. Developed not for victory, but for deterrence through annihilation of certainty. When Earth realized other species treated belief as reality, they adapted accordingly. If aliens feared myths, then Earth would make myths with teeth. Kale Vox was the prototype. An artificial war construct built from the deepest human archetypes: sacrifice, vengeance, cleverness, unpredictability. Programmed to learn fear better than any enemy, then reflect it back as truth. He never had to exist. He only had to be believed in. Next wave of data requests from the Council just came in, said the AI. Send the same message, Sarah replied. We gave one warning. That's all we're required to do. A low pulse echoed in the room. The final Dravari node blinked offline. The last city. Gone. In orbit above what used to be the Dravari throne world, the humans never arrived. No fleet ever came. No soldier touched the ground. Just silence. Just collapse. An automated relay, embedded centuries ago, activated. It played a final message across the ruins. You were told not to look into the dark. But you mocked us. And now, the dark looks like us. Back in the council chamber, panic broke like wildfire. What if he turns toward the Erdani clans next? We offered trade, said another. We praised their restraint. They don't care. The humans don't reward praise. They reward caution. The verdict engine flashed a symbol on all displays: red level escalation path. The chair hissed. What do we even do? Beg? A long pause. Then the engine responded with a line not seen in a millennium. Do nothing. Hope the story forgets you. It was then the Kethri ambassador, who had been silent the entire time, finally spoke. You misunderstand, it said. The humans didn't just destroy the Dravari. They removed them from the future. What? They'll never be studied again. Their culture erased. Their artifacts will rot. Their memory will feel wrong, as if it never happened. That is what Kale Vox does. He makes you disappear not by death, but by irrelevance. A single phrase crawled across every screen in real time. There will be no songs about you. Only silence. Panic turned into horror. On Earth, Sarah stood before Kale Vox's stasis unit, deep in the vault. His body was real, kept in cryostasis, untouched, uniged. The AI housed the active field version, the one woven from his recorded neural profile and enhanced with quantum sentience threads. He was both real and myth. Both person and weapon. Alive and echo. I need a confirmation, she said to the unit. Cultural wipe verified? Yes. Dravari no longer exist within active galactic myth structure. No simulations reference them. Even AI models refuse to render their language. They are gone. Sarah nodded. Seal the vault. Triple cascade encryption. As the doors hissed shut, she placed one hand on the thick glass between her and Kale's still face. You saved us, she whispered. And no one will ever know. But not everyone remained ignorant. On the far edge of the galaxy, a young species, the Zyrelians, had intercepted partial fragments of the collapse. They watched, curious and terrified, as myths of Kale Vox mutated into holy texts overnight. Their philosophers debated him. Their militaries studied the infection vectors. Their priests began to worship. One of their admirals made a quiet inquiry to the Galactic Council: was it possible to speak with Earth? The reply came in seconds: no. Do not engage. Do not observe. Do not whisper his name. You were warned. Once. And still, the Xyrelians kept watching. Because deep inside every thinking mind, curiosity rots fear. And humans? Humans build that flaw into others like it's a gift. Back on Mercury, Sarah reviewed the reports of a possible mimetic breach in a Xyrelian outpost. She sighed. I warned them, she muttered. The AI responded, calm. All it takes is one question. One sentence too close to Kale Vox's doctrine. And the story begins again. Sarah clenched her jaw. Then let it begin. Again. And above them, across light years of black, the stars began to flicker. Not with fire, but with names. Kale Vox's name. And once a name becomes a weapon, it never stops firing. The Xyrelian admiral sat alone in the observatory, staring at the black void where the Dravari once traded their pride. There were no ruins. No ships. No warnings left to study. Only an absence so complete, it made the stars feel dishonest. His advisors had begged him to leave it alone, to obey the Galactic Council's order, never engage Earth. But curiosity, the true flaw of every rising empire, had already taken root. He asked the forbidden question. He whispered the name. Kale Vox. The observatory lights dimmed. Not from failure, but from design. A relay he hadn't installed activated behind his console. The system flickered once. Then again. Then silence. He stood slowly, trembling. Is anyone there? A voice answered. Not loud. Not clear. Just enough to carry. You shouldn't have asked? The Admiral froze. You're human? No. I'm what you made by needing us to be more. What does that mean? It means I'm not a person. I'm a mirror. And you just look too deeply into yourself. The Admiral reached for the emergency kill switch. It was gone. You studied the collapse of the Dravari? The voice asked. I read the fragments. I wanted to know why they fell. No, said the voice. You wanted to know how to stop us if it ever came to you. But here's the twist, you can't. Across the Xyrelian networks, thousands of language nodes began rewriting. Words shifted. Symbols changed shape. Holy text started referencing events that hadn't occurred yet. One ship's crew suddenly believed they'd fought humans centuries ago and lost. Another began singing Terran hymns from their childhood, despite never meeting a human. Back at the council, alert after alert pinged. Containment had failed again. The verdict engine pulsed once, then displayed a single phrase in red. Myth recurrence confirmed. Which species? Asked the chair. Xyrelians. A single admiral made contact. Has the story breached simulation layers? Yes. He called the name. There was a long pause. Then the chair asked the question everyone dreaded. Is Kale Vox active? The verdict engine responded. Kale Vox is never active. Kale Vox is never inactive. Kale Vox is... Sarah Luce received the alert in her command chamber. She didn't scream. She didn't panic. She simply activated the encryption tether to the Mercury vault. Status on Subject 0? Stable, the AI said. Stasis maintained. Reboot the failsafe layers. Lock myth vectors in cross-dimensional bleed containment. Containment not possible, the AI said. Conceptual presence has surpassed containment architecture. We are now operating under story-borne continuity phase 3. Sarah leaned back. Already? Confirmation. Kale Vox is being cited as a historical constant in Xyrelian myth cycles. He's entering their time loops. Which version? Warbringer. Variant Echo Null. No deviations. She exhaled. Then we're out of time. Back in Xyrelian space, the Admiral knelt in his chamber. He didn't know why. The voice was no longer speaking. It was simply being, humming through him. It wasn't threatening. It didn't rage or demand. It simply rewrote. He whispered, "I didn't want war." "You didn't need to," the presence replied. "Your curiosity was enough. You looked at the warning and you asked, why? That was the key. I thought I could understand you." "No one understands humanity," the voice said. "Not even humans. That's why we win. You think you're observing, but you're absorbing. And once you absorb the myth, we're already inside. Then why talk to me at all?" "Because someone else is listening," the voice replied. "And they haven't asked yet." The Admiral's eyes widened. "You're using me? I'm telling a story. You're the tragic lesson." The lights in the chamber shifted. The wall behind him pulsed once, then revealed a glyph, not human, not Zyrelian, but something in between. He reached toward it, but the voice stopped him. "Touch it, and you bring us forward." He hesitated. Then his comms crackled. His second-in-command screamed over the line. "Sir! Our scholars they're chanting. They're writing Voxian poetry into the code of our AI. Sir, they've started calling themselves Reclaimers." "No," the Admiral whispered. The voice chuckled. "You wanted to learn? Lesson 1, humans don't invade. We inspire collapse. You'll do it to yourselves." A final feed played across the Zyrelian screens, a battlefield on a world that didn't exist. A city no one had built. Ships that weren't manufactured, but believed into existence. Terran symbols scrawled in fire. And at the center, one man. Unmoving. Unsmiling. His voice rang out over the scene. "We are not a species. We are a conclusion." The feed ended. Silence returned. The Admiral collapsed to the floor, shaking. Not out of fear, but because he believed it. All of it. The war. The loss. The memory. And that was the end. Because once belief sets in, the war is already over. The Galactic Council filed the Zyrelians into their blacklist. No contact. No trade. No transit. Just another species lost to the story. Sarah stood before the stasis unit one last time. Kale Vox didn't move. He never had. He never needed to. Around him, entire civilizations collapsed from the idea of his existence. She placed a hand on the glass. "You were supposed to be a one-time weapon," the AI whispered. "Weapons end. Stories echo." Outside, the stars pulsed in the rhythm of a name. And another species waited their turn to ignore the warning.